So, welcome to our October Dive In with Dom. Um, this forum, as you know, is a public forum dedicated to the practice of inquiry. And in each meeting, we discuss some subtlety of the practice, some nuance of the practice. And this evening, we're going to turn to a very interesting question. I think it's an interesting question for people, mostly for people who are not in the diamond approach, right? Or people who are maybe just starting out with the diamond approach. The question of, well, what is a path? Right? So there is this wonderful practice, and people sometimes talk about a path. And I've had a number of people who do inquiry courses. They do inquiry and they love inquiry. They think it's great. And then they wonder, well, what is this talk about a path and a school, and what would all that be about? So this evening, we're going to look a little bit at that, at this kind of interesting relationship. And actually the whole notion of a path. That's a really interesting thing to touch into. So we'll be recording the session, as you know. Everything that happens in this main meeting room is recorded. We share the recordings on our YouTube channel, so you can go and see all of the past Dive In with Dom sessions there. Been covering a whole range of topics. 2 years, more than 2 years of sessions there. So all looking into different aspects of the practice. So if you're new to this session or new to the practice of inquiry, there's a great resource there for you to go and look at and, learn something about the different nuances of the practice. So we're going to start, as we usually do, with a short practice, a meditation practice. And it's interesting. Yeah. So I want you to find an optimal sitting position for your meditation. So you're comfortable and you feel your feet on the ground, your butt in the chair. So you're kind of supported, feeling that support. And then you're turning towards your inner world, turning towards your consciousness, your experience. And you can let your eyes close. And I want you to just take a moment to notice where you are as we begin this evening. What are you feeling? What's going on in your mind? What are you thinking? What are you sensing? What's happening in your body? What's your sense of your consciousness? How does your consciousness feel to you? And so we're going to do a meditation practice, which is a way of engaging your inner world. Right? So noticing all of that content, noticing those thoughts, those feelings, those sensations. And then bring your attention to your lower belly area. Right? You can place your one hand over your lower belly, your other hand over the first hand. And just bring your attention to your lower belly area. So what you're doing here is you're focusing your attention. So this is one way of working with your inner world. Working with your consciousness is focusing. You can focus your attention on the sensations of your lower belly. So see what you feel there. It may be just the warmth of your hand, maybe the sensation of your clothing, your belt. It may be the movement of your belly as you breathe. And you're placing your attention there and letting yourself focus on, staying in touch with it. So this is a particular practice, a particular way to be with your experience. If anything else comes along, thought and feelings, all those other things you noticed at the beginning, it's all fine. You don't have to change them, get rid of them, do anything about them. But you're not going to put your primary focus on. You're going to place your primary focus on your belly and stay in touch with that. If at some point you notice that you're getting caught up in thinking about something or focusing on some other sensation in your body or some emotion, let it go. As soon as you notice, you let it go and you bring your attention back to your lower belly. So that's the practice, to keep returning to the sensations of your lower belly. Simply abiding with the sensations of your belly. If your focus of attention has wandered off, notice that and bring it back to sensing your lower belly. So now take one more breath into your lower belly, sensing the sensation, and then release the concentration. So it's a short period of practice, but notice, what's the effect of it? How has it affected you to spend a few minutes placing your attention on your lower belly? Now I'm going to get you to do something different. Now I want you to notice what you sense in your lower belly and see if you can begin describing it to yourself. Sort of just verbalize it. Like, what's there? What if you get really curious about the sensations of your lower belly and just describe, like hang out with it and describe what's there? Like, what are you actually in touch with there? What's happening there? What can you say about it? What happens when you give it a little time and keep hanging out with it? Like, oh, okay, you've noticed something. Don't get up and walk away. Keep staying there. See what's happening there now. And if it feels like not much or not much is happening, but if you stay with that not much, if you bring that sort of focused, curious attention, as if you were peering into the dark and going, what? I wonder what's there. Let me feel it. Let me sense it. Let me discover. And keep describing it to yourself. Keep wondering, what is it? What can I say about it? Okay. Then you can let go of that. Take a moment to begin sensing your arms and legs. Just becoming present in your body. And then include listening, sounds. So you're sensing your body, listening, and then add looking. Gradually let your eyes open. Allow the room, the screen, your whole visual sensing. So notice, what was the effect of articulating and describing what was there in your belly? Did that have an effect? And did it have a different effect than the meditation, than placing your attention on it? What do you see about that? So in a way, what you have there is a tiny little taste of two different ways of working with your experience. Yeah, in this case, the sensations are, well, actually your whole experience. One is to place your attention on it, to just concentrate on it and stay in touch with it. Everything else can be going on, and you just keep bringing yourself back to that focus, right? That's a concentration meditation. It is a way of engaging your inner world. And when you do that, it has a certain effect. If you keep doing that, for a significant period of time and you do it regularly, things will start happening from doing that. It will start affecting you and leading to various changes and openings and, revealing certain barriers. You'll notice, I keep trying to come back, but I keep getting pulled out. So I just have to keep pulled out. Okay, come back, pulled out, come back. One day you'll wake up, you practice, you realize, I'm actually just kind of hanging out here. I can just stay here. Something has changed, and my concentration is more steady. Then you might notice other things that start getting in the way of the concentration. So the more you practice the concentration, the more you begin to see and discover what are the things that interfere with it, that block it, right? As you're just engaging the practice. And those things that happen are different than if you inquire into your belly, than if you actually start exploring it and articulating what's there and being curious about it, wondering what's making that happen. You didn't even get to that question. Yeah. Like, feeling this in my belly feels kind of like tingly and kind of solid. What's making that happen? How come that's there? That's a whole nother question. So what I'm trying to illustrate here, or give you a practical little taste of, is the way that there is a practice. Meditation is a practice. Inquiry is a practice. As you engage the practice, things start happening, right? The practice starts having an effect on you, and you will start recognizing, understanding, seeing various things, depending on the nature of the practice. So now anybody can meditate, anybody can inquire, right? You can practice placing your concentration, and you can practice exploring and inquiring to find out what's going on there with you. Sustained practice of these two different practices will lead to very different things. You'll discover very different things if you keep inquiring and you continue inquiring than if you just keep meditating. Right? It will take you on a whole different route. You will discover things from the articulation and the verbalization and the trying to understand your experience, which is what inquiry is really about, is going to take you in a particular direction that is not the same as the direction that will happen if you keep practicing concentration. So this begins to give you a sense of what it could mean to talk about a path. That there is the practice, and a practice has a certain kind of logic to it. A practice is a certain way of engaging your inner world, engaging your experience. And depending on the nature of that engagement, that will start leading to an unfolding journey. Right? And in a way, that journey that begins unfolding, that begins taking you somewhere, is the path that can begin showing up. And it turns out, with these various different practices, that as you engage with them, if it is a real practice, then that path tends to have certain similarities that are the same from person to person. Right? There are particularities. Everybody has their own particular journey. But there are also overall kind of features of the path that, everybody will come to. Everybody will come to the recognition of. So with inquiry, as you begin to inquire, get in touch with your feelings, your sensations, your mind and your thoughts and the interaction of that, you're understanding how it's going on in relation to your life. You keep exploring it, and in time, that's going to start exposing certain territory within you. Right? It's going to start you first. You're going to discover all of those different things, all different kinds of feelings and reactions, and you'll begin noticing the differences between them. Like, oh, here I got all reactive, and here I got all sort of sweet and melting, and oh, those were quite different, right? And there's something in each of those experiences I can find out about. So inquiry has some particular features. And perhaps the most basic features of inquiry, the way of working with your experience, is that it is open, and open-ended. So it is open to whatever is arising for you, whatever's occurring in your consciousness. We're open to it. And we're exploring it simply to find out what it is and what's making it happen. Like, oh, what is that? What is going on there? How come I'm feeling that way? How come I'm thinking that way? Where does that thought come from inside me? Where does that belief come from? What's it like? Well, how can I get in touch with it? And what can I discover about it? So this is a radical kind of practice. It's a radical kind of openness, right? To be completely open to anything that shows up for you, and to be only interested in finding out what's true about it, what its truth is. Not whether it feels good, not whether you like it or dislike it, or it fits into your standards or any of that, but just to be curious about it, to see what is making this happen inside me. So as we do that, that takes us on this journey. And in time, that will begin to expose your early history, your conditioning, all of your ego structures. You'll begin to discover presence itself, actual felt sense of presence. You begin to recognize, this feeling in my chest, like it feels light and bubbly and kind of makes me feel all playful and light. And yet I can sense it as a something in my chest. Like, who knew that was in my chest? So we begin to discover all different elements of our experience that we might have had no idea were even possible. Right? Were even something, I kind of feel like my whole head is opened up, and there's the sense of spaciousness and openness and freedom. It makes me feel very light. Oh gosh, it feels like my consciousness sort of extends into the whole room. Wow, didn't know that was possible. But here it is, it's happening right now. So we just stay open to it and we keep exploring. So wherever it takes us, we, in a certain sense, very simple. We just keep going, oh, wow, okay, let me check this out. Right? What is this? What happens when I get in touch with this, when I allow this and find out? So you can see that will then unfold this whole inner journey, right? This whole path. And that's the path that is described as being the path of the diamond approach, right? So it is actually a natural phenomenon. It's like when you engage this practice of just finding out what your experience is and just being clear about it to recognize its reality and its truth, right? That starts taking you in certain territory, in a certain direction that has a kind of its objective reality. It's like you dive into the ocean and you're going to start finding what's there. And in time, you're going to find the things that are there. Yeah. It has a kind of reality to it. So all paths are like that. They're actually, if it's a real path, it has an objective reality to it. If you engage in meditation, if you keep doing concentration meditation, there are whole paths like around that, schools of Buddhism that like focus on that concentration practice. And the more you do that, the more that will open up certain things, and go through certain stages in the practice and realize certain things. There's a whole path there. That practice can be a whole path, right? So the path is, if you like, the sort of unfolding of our consciousness as we engage in the practice. And inquiry is just the pure practice itself, that practice of just being open and exploring. So there's a path in the sense of this inner journey that unfolds and starts taking us places, that has, as I said, this kind of objective reality. And then there is the school of the diamond approach. And that, in a sense, is a whole nother thing, right? So that says, okay, there's this path. We know that the journey unfolds. We've discovered it goes in all these kind of directions. So we can support people to engage in, right? So instead of having to figure out scuba diving all by yourself, for yourself, from first principles, how to dive into everything, actually, we can go on a course to help you learn how to dive into these particular things, or how to explore these particular things, how to allow that path to unfold for you, right? And that's, in a sense, where there's a certain kind of support that can come in to help people on that journey. Do you need it? It's debatable. It may be that for you, inquiry, you just like to inquire, you enjoy where it takes you, and it's kind of working for you, and that's fine, right? And it may be that as you inquire, you kind of get into some tricky places, and you're like, God, well, I'm having this reaction or this feeling, or something's coming up in my consciousness, and I don't know what it is, and I don't really know how to navigate here, and it's getting really tricky. And some kind of orientation and teaching and all of that kind of thing can be helpful. And having a teacher who's on that journey, who's walked the path before you, and can help you, guide you, help orient you as you navigate certain tricky territories within it. Because the inner world, as every spiritual path and every psychological kind of school of psychology has recognized, the inner world is tricky, right? It's tricky. There are difficult things. There are things that are very hard to navigate. It can feel impossible to know what to do or where to turn. And that kind of support of the path and the teaching and the teacher and all the rest of it can be very valuable. So inquiry can then therefore be, for you, it could be just a practice that you do once in a while or every so often that you enjoy doing, and you get something rich out of it, right? You learn something about yourself and you appreciate that. And that might be all it is to you. At some point, you may recognize, wow, I'm like so turned on to this. I like really love it so much. Want to engage with it as fully as I can, and really follow where it can take me. And then you're kind of leaning more into the path, right? You're sort of feeling, oh, I really want to go on this journey. Right? And there's something like the school, everything to do with that can be a big support. Right? Finding a teacher, learning, getting some of the understanding, because the understanding of the teaching is not just, it's never, people take a long time, I think, to get this too. It's not like dogma. It's not theory that you have to take on board and believe. It's more like just somebody who's dived into, using our diving analogy, dived into that terrain and is just giving you a description of how it typically looks, what it might look like. And then you got to go dive in yourself. You got to find out for yourself what it is for you. But at least you have some pointers. Okay, there's going to be a dark crevasse over there that I'm not going to want to go into. And I know that actually, if I go through that, something really interesting is on the other side. So even though I'm kind of don't really want to do it, I kind of really do as well. So because I have that support, I might be willing to do it. Whereas left to your own devices, you probably just swim past it. It wouldn't even occur to you to go in there. So it's just like going scuba diving with a guide who can say to you, "Oh, look at that little thing, and see that little piece in the rocks over there that you weren't really looking at. Go check that out. There's something really cool in there." Or you didn't even notice it, but you're actually going round in this tide, right? In the sea, the current is swimming you around. And actually, what we got to do is kind of swim very hard in the opposite direction. So let's go do that for a bit, so we can get out of it and then see what's going on. So these are the kinds of things that teachers and community and that can do. And it's much more fun to have other people to do it with, and doing it together, you learn a lot from each other, just like going diving together. Like, oh yeah, I saw this, you saw this. We can compare notes and see what we learn about. Yeah. I guess while we're kind of touching on these concepts, the last concept to mention then is the teaching. Like, what actually is the teaching? So on the outside of it, like the way I often describe it is like, so inquiry is the practice. People who come to my dive-in inquiry courses learn how to inquire, learn how to dive into their inner worlds and explore, right? Then there is the territory that you explore. Like maybe you're really diving a lot into things to do with your strength. Maybe you're diving into things to do with compassion and kindness. Maybe you're diving into things that have to do with joy, right? Maybe you're diving into things that feel like it's all about some particular part of your inner child. Yeah. So there can be different territories. So the outermost understanding of what the teaching is, we give you some teaching, which is like the description of these sorts of territories. In the inquiry courses, we don't really go into that. We just go into how to inquire. But then there is the what you're actually inquiring into. And sometimes it's useful to have some information about that, right? To be taken we're going on a guided tour to go diving into our anger and to learn the secrets of that, right? Or we're going to dive into our secrets of our inner peace to discover something about that. So that's where teaching, this one-way teaching is useful. The more sort of subtle nature of the teaching, what the teaching really is this inner organizing principle of our consciousness. Because inquiry has a certain logic, right? There's a logic to being open to anything and just discovering its truth, articulating it and discovering its truth. So that's a practice that expresses a certain orientation, and that orientation reveals certain truths about the inner world, about your consciousness. And that force of understanding, the sort of, if you like, the force of the way that our consciousness responds to that engagement of that practice, that is actually the teaching. It is like an inner force within our consciousness, something that makes it unfold in a certain way. Like when you engage in this way, you will learn and discover certain things. It will go in a particular way. And that inner force is really the teaching. That's the source of the teaching. Nobody made it up. It's not like anybody made it up. What they discovered is if you engage in your inner world in this way, these are the kinds of things that you get to discover. This is how it unfolds. And it turns out it unfolds in that way for everyone in certain broad directions. And that's the same with any spiritual path. Right? There's a kind of inner teaching that is the natural force of how that practice and engagement with that practice leads to various understandings and recognitions about experience and about consciousness. So every real spiritual path kind of has that. It has an inner logic that informs it. and that guides what happens, how it unfolds. So that's kind of some big picture view on these things. And like I said, it's really for everybody. It's a personal thing, just to see, where are you? How do you feel in relation to inquiry? Do you see inquiry as something that you just like to do once in a while? It's like it's a practice that's kind of rich and enjoyable for you in some way. You get something valuable out of it. You can be curious about that. Oh, what is it? What is it that I get out of it that's valuable? Do you recognize, if you've been practicing for a while, do you recognize that, oh, things are kind of unfolding a bit, right? That I'm discovering different things than I was discovering right at the beginning, that there's some kind of journey beginning to happen here. See if you recognize that. If you do, how do you feel about that journey? Is it a journey that you kind of, that excites you, or you're not really interested in? You see, for some people, they discover their natural path. I know many, like even Diamond Approach students, who will say, actually, my main thing is like my meditation. That's my thing. I love that. Sit down to meditate. Like, that's the practice that really speaks to me. That's the path I'm really on. And my inquiry is kind of, I love it, but it's kind of secondary to that. Right? So for some people, inquiry feels like their main thing. For some people, it's a supporting thing in another practice. It's good to recognize, maybe one last thing to say, that difference in orientation, because the orientations really are different. If your primary path is one of placing my attention on my sort of consciousness and letting go of the content, if that is your primary approach, then that's the primary way you're going to approach things, right? That's the main thing you're going to do. So if a reaction comes up in you, well, I got very jealous yesterday. Okay. So your first response, your natural response is going to be, I'm going to focus on my presence, on my belly, and let go of that that's going to be how you'll work with it, if that's your path. If inquiry is your path, you're going to go, oh, I got jealous. That's so interesting. I wonder what's making that happen. What's that like? Let me find out about it. Let me open to that experience and see what's making it happen. And those two practices will take you in two different directions. In the Diamond Approach, of course, we do use meditation. We use it as a supporting practice. That's why we say it's a supporting practice. Inquiry is the main practice. Inquiry is the principal orientation that we're engaging, that actually leads to the unfoldment that makes up the Diamond Approach path. But meditation is useful too. Need to be able to meditate. Okay, so I think I've said maybe enough about that. And I'd just like to invite you to look a little into this for yourselves. So we're going to put you into a breakout room, and you'll be in groups of, how are we doing for time? Okay, we got some time here. So let's be in groups of 3. And you each have like 5 minutes to just reflect on, like, where are you with this? Actually, you know what, Mike, sorry, make it groups of 2, right? Make it groups of 2. Each have 5 minutes to just reflect on, what you see about what I've been talking about. Where are you in terms of your practice, in terms of the idea of the notion of a path or the unfolding of your practice? Do you have other practices? Do you see there's another path that feels like more your thing? Again, I keep thinking of things to add, but one last thing. I think when people first start a practice, they don't recognize the actual need for a path, or they don't recognize the reality of a path. The fact that engaging in this practice is going to lead to a very long-term kind of unfoldment. Whether your primary practice is meditation or inquiry, that journey with that practice has potential to nourish you and to reveal things to you and to unfold and expand and deepen. Like, it's not about doing the 6 month, or the 3 week course on meditation or the 6 lesson course on inquiry. Hell no. Like, that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Right? These things, these practices are things you can engage for decades, for your whole life, and it will keep unfolding and developing. Right? So that's also something about the nature of a path. People tend to think like, oh, I'm going to do a 6 month course or even a year course, and then I'm going to be, then I've got it. I've done mindfulness or I've done inquiry or whatever. But it's a complete misunderstanding, because really what you're doing is engaging something that has potential to unfold literally a whole life. So there's a reality to the path, and to get more and more subtle and more deep and to take all kinds of weird, unexpected left turns. Right? These are the things that happen as we begin to engage deeply in any inner practice. So there really is actually a need for this. Eventually, at some point, we begin to recognize there's a real need. Like, people go, well, I've been doing what I can on my own with these little bits and pieces for a while, but actually now I see I'm kind of a bit lost here. There's a real need for something bigger to support that journey. So, as Michael's just put the exercise in the thing there, you want to just look into inquiry and the notion of a path. 5 minutes each, and then take 5 minutes together to just discuss what you've discussed together, what you're learning, sharing your experience, and just have a little 5 minute discussion and then come back to the main room. So we'll be back here at, let's say, let's call it past, maybe just after past. Alrighty, enjoy. See you in a bit. Cool. Okay. So our question of inquiry, the practice, the path. Well, what did you see about this? What are your questions? What are you curious about? Sharon, and then John.
Right, it's just a quick question.
Hmm.
So this path is a path of non-duality. So I was reading some of, or part of it. Yeah, part of it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading something the other day. I was thinking, there's me, and then there's the path.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two things. I'm just curious as whether, in the same way as I have an experience of merging, and then actually I am the merging,
Mm-hmm.
whether the same applies to the path, whether there is always a path, or whether at some point you are the path.
Well, it's an interesting way, like the language is tricky here, because the path is not a thing. It's not like it's you and a thing, although you may hold it in that way, and that may be very interesting to explore and to look at. It's more like, if you look back over your journey with inquiry, if you look at your inquiry, if you look back over the last couple of years and you see how your inquiry has unfolded, can
Yeah,
you see that? Can you see that your inner world has moved and shifted?
of course. Yeah.
That's the path. That's what I'm pointing to. It's that movement, that progression of movement, that is the path. The
But
path is not as something else that that you look at and go, oh, there's the path. It's more like, no, the path is that unfolding movement of your own experience.
but in order to stay on the path,
Yeah. You engage the practice.
you engage the practice, which means that there's the practice and then
Yeah.
there's the teaching. And so the diamond approach is another thing separate from me.
Well, again, this is where it can get quite subtle here. So the engaging the practice is you engaging inquiry, just exploring your own inner experience, right? That's in some ways, that's the practice. And that practice leads to a certain unfoldment that is the unfolding of the path, right? And in a sense, I'm saying that is the path of the diamond approach. That thing which is completely about you and your consciousness. Now, that is supported by having, you know, teachings and courses and other teachers and all that kind of thing, you know, from the school, right? But in a sense, all that is doing is supporting you to inquire into different parts of your inner world that you might not have thought to look into. But still, principally, all you're doing is inquiring. And the inquiry is opening up in various ways.
Yeah.
And so actually, we say this actually when we teach the diamond approach, it is all about you and your experience. That's the thing that matters. Everything that's the words and the kind of from the teachers and all of that is simply to orient you to go and look at your own experience and see what you find, because that's all we do. We engage our practice of open inquiry.
Right, I see.
You see?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's more inquiry to do into that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's still another, yeah. Yes. Okay, I'll have to process that a little. Or
Yeah. Mull it over. Yeah, exactly. See what you see.
I have to know I'm an inquiry person, not a meditation person. So
I do know that about you. Good, Sharon. Thanks.
bring it on. Bring it on.
Good question. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, Dom. So my question, I have an inquiry partner and we do a weekly inquiry session, which I absolutely enjoy. And it has been rich. But at a certain point, I stop and I say to him, what are we doing? Where are we going? I mean, it's just like we do this over and over again. And, you know, you swim in the ocean, you look around, you have some reveal, but I don't know. It just at a certain point, it feels like there is no path, or there is no. I don't want to say objective, but I can keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not sure I see at this point for myself a deepening, or you know, a richness. And again, I'll keep on doing it, but it's just I stop like every, you know, 3 or 4 months. I'm like, what are we doing? I want to so I don't know if that's typical.
So if you look at like what's going on in your inquiry these days, yeah, you sort of contemplate that.
Okay.
And you look back like you've been doing this now for how long? How long were you
Well,
doing
with this partner, about a year and a half.
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So does it seem the same as it was at the beginning?
Well, the issues, like the object relations issues, they just keep coming up over and over again, which I'm really tired of. But you know, so sometimes it's revisiting old issues and not moving past them, which I find a little frustrating.
Right. So you see, so here it starts all to get interesting. Right. So, well, I could ask you what's frustrating about that.
Well, I would think at a certain point, after years of analysis and after years in the diamond approach, they would take less hold and they wouldn't keep resurfacing in an inquiry, you know. And a lot of times I think in the questions that the teachings ask, it sort of brings you back to the same thing again over and over again. So there's a part of me that I think wants to move on. Maybe that's my frustration.
What makes you think that?
What makes me think what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what makes you think that's how it goes? That you should get over like the object relation, they shouldn't come up again.
Um,
How long have
but
you, a quick question, how long have you been in the school?
I don't. I'm doing track 8, 9 years.
Okay.
We're in the
Yeah.
Diamond Dome right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's the teaching.
Yeah.
So and I mean the last teaching was about pride, and it just sort of keeps bringing me back to my ego structure, and
Yeah.
it's like I want to, I you know I this part of me wants to move on, wants to get somewhere else. So I
Oh,
sense that frustration in me.
right. So there's a frustration. It sounds like there's some rejection of what's actually coming up in your experience,
Yeah, probably.
wanting it to be something else. It seems like you are in the territory of the time.
Yeah. I guess the question too, I mean, I guess I know the answer is just continue doing what I'm doing. I almost want to ask you, is there a way to make the inquiry richer, to
Yeah.
make it help me go more deeper, even with my partner?
Yes. So, two things. One thing I want to just point out is your whole question points to what we're talking about here, to the actual need for some kind of support on the path, because we get to these kind of places where we think, what the hell's going on here? I'm like,
Mhm.
well, right? So there can be a real need for some kind of orientation or guidance or, that kind of thing. So that's one thing to say. And the other thing that I'll say is that, and I see, I myself see and I appreciate in my own students like the importance of, because in a sense, what you're pointing to is a lack of, I could say, confidence or faith that just inquiring is the thing to do. Because with inquiry, you really, if some structure shows up again, you want to go, oh, it's here again. Like, what about it? What's
Mhm.
making it happen this time? Or what's true about this now?
Mhm.
And what I see, and I think this was genuinely one of Hamid's just astonishing gifts. The guy was just amazingly gifted at this, is the more you can not assume it's anything you've seen before, that what's making it happen is anything to do with what's made it happen before.
Mhm.
If you can just stay completely open and curious and not knowing and contemplate it and feel into it more and more deeply, it will take you places you haven't been. Right? I can guarantee that. Yeah.
Okay.
And that
That's
that kind of, I think there's a certain misunderstanding that we have that these kind of that at some point we're going to get past the kind of structures and they'll be gone, and then things will just unfold wonderfully as these levels and dimensions and all of that. But the truth is, I don't see that it goes like that, right? That actually, if you can, and I see it with friends I inquire with who like, been inquiring for like, nearly 30 years, right? And it's so easy to go, oh, I'm having a narcissistic reaction again. Here it is again. I'm feeling not appreciated. It's like, okay, but what is that actually? What about you is not feeling appreciated? If you feel into the place that's having this reaction, that this reaction is coming from, like, what can you find out about it? And I tell you for sure, there is something you haven't yet discovered and understood. Right.
okay.
So to have that openness, right, to kind of, yeah, try it out. Let us know.
Okay. I appreciate that. That is helpful, Dom. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome, Todd. I think these are very real deep questions. Yes, Randy. Hi.
Hi. I'm just going to say I'm familiar with the diamond approach.
Uh-huh.
I just came out of curiosity because my friends have mentioned it a few times. I know some of them are practicing it for years, but I just like the idea. I just like the term unfolding and open ending.
Yes.
that was what I liked what you said, really, because I just think that when you tune in and inwards, it's always evolving and unfolding. It's not fixed, and it's always shifting. So
Right.
I'm of a therapeutic modality called internal family systems. So
Yes.
I think the way I've started to tune in more in my own inner world is in terms of parts, still
Yeah.
learning to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking about, because I'd heard lots of good things about the diamond approach. And I think that meditation is good for me. I have a health condition. I do
Mm-hmm.
tend to do a bit of boom and bust over every so often. I'm in a bust at the moment where I've overdone it and get too excited and try and do too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to find ways of, finding that balance. And I know meditation is really good for my health,
Right. Yeah.
finding that discipline to
Yes.
keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm having a good time.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than when it's just always not so good. So,
Right.
so the two questions I had was, the idea, it sounds just by the conversation you just had that the notion of parts would sit fine with the diamond approach anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of parts way
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
conceptualizing your experience,
Yep.
and
I mean, we use a lot of, well, as you see, so all of the terminology in the diamond approach is really just descriptive. It just describes what you're experiencing. We find like the concept, especially of object relations, which I think is similar to.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So we use that a lot. So that's very, very consistent. I think. I mean, I don't deeply know IFS. A number of my students are IFS practitioners and therapists. And I think the additional piece, especially the additional piece in the diamond approach, two things. One is the inclusion of the felt sense in a much broader way, like a broader kind of approach to sensing and what it is
so
that
that's good that you said that, because I'm a somatic IFS therapist. I'm a somatic trained, so I think the way I notice my experience is much more through sensation rather than thinking.
Yes.
Thinking is the only happens when I'm angry. When
Oh,
it's unresolved, then I'll get racing thoughts then.
isn't that really interesting? See, so much to be curious about.
Yeah. So I just come here, and I wasn't really, I just thought I'd just keep coming, see how it goes, and then see if I want to take it further. I just thought I'd
Beautiful.
say.
Very welcome to. Thanks for coming along and sharing some of your experience.
Okay. Thank you anyway.
Oh, great.
Thanks for listening.
Lovely. I mean, I think another interesting distinction. So, I mean, I was comparing inquiry and meditation. Didn't talk a lot about inquiry, and so therapeutic modalities also have their own kind of inner logic. Right? And I don't know what the particular inner logic of IFS is, but it may have, they tend to have they're seeking a certain resolution or a certain something to happen. And one of the things that therapists grapple with in the diamond approach is just being open to understanding it, not trying to fix anything, right? And to kind of just be curious to see what it is that's happening, right? That kind of a totally open agenda to see where that takes you, sort of can sometimes expand the remit, makes it a little more open than a purely therapeutic model, which can have a little more of a goal in mind.
Well, it was interesting when you were talking to, I think, Sharon, because I was just thinking about whatever framework you're kind of putting, that's going to shape your experience, just like words do. Because I'm always curious, like, if I'm coming through my body, that's going to impact how it mediates how I'm going to meet my experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then the same way, the diamond approach will the same way. I suppose I kind of always get curious about it because I speak two languages and how my experience feels different through different languages.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of always think there's another way of always looking at something that I'm not, you know what I mean? So
beautiful. Yeah, if you want to get a light taste, you could always try one of the inquiry courses.
Yeah.
Inquiry courses that I mean, I've got a little online inquiry course, and it's very simple, short, It's kind of a low commitment thing, but you can get a taste of the orientation of inquiry.
Yeah, I think that's kind of would be nice just to have a feel
Yeah,
of what it's like, you know.
yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thank you anyway, because
Thank
I
you,
feel like I'm
guys.
taking all the route.
Welcome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
very welcome. Yeah, what else? Anyone else have anything to share or to
I have
ask?
a question, Dom.
Yeah. Who's
Hi,
that?
I couldn't find my raise hand.
Jill. Hi, Jill.
Hello. Um, there's a couple of questions percolating. So I think the two I'll land on. Well, first of all, I really appreciate this. I've been curious just to hear more about it. I've been doing inquiry, so I've been doing the practice. I've been in an inquiry group with a teacher. Now I'm in an inquiry group with peers, and I really appreciate the path and I could probably take more time to reflect on the journey a little bit more. I feel like that's probably part of my work that I'm not as focused on and 7. So I'm just like going forward. But I think I could probably I try to review my notes sometimes and just see like what we've gone over. And I now that you're bringing this up, I could see that it would be very useful. And two things have come up for me. I guess the top two questions I have are one about the veils and questions about like how when we talk about just being open-ended and exploring versus having a goal, I feel like because I'm also doing the book club that's reading Love Unveiled, and I've heard terminology, about rending the veils, and I work with a therapist who's a teacher, and so that seems the goal oriented to me, even though when we break it down, there's no other side necessarily, or it keeps on going. There's more veils to rend. And I don't know if that's something, it's too big of a topic to bring into this, but I feel like there's a little bit of a trajectory or something like, so I wanted to bring that up.
So I think that, I mean, on the one hand, it's true that in the path becomes a path of like rending the veil. It's a metaphorical way to talk about it. And it's also, I guess, quite descriptive of the reality. But we don't rend veils by, pulling out our sword and slashing them, or by getting rid of the veils. All we do is we kind of just find out what they are. And then at some point we see them for what you're like, oh, I thought that was reality, but it's just a veil. It's just an idea that I had. That's actually just a piece of my history that's overlaying my experience of the moment. And it's not even got anything to do with what's really going on here. So that's the way that inquiry naturally kind of rends veils. It doesn't try to rend veils. It doesn't have any goal other than just seeing what's true and what's going on. But that very process of getting clear and seeing what's true will naturally reveal, oh, well, there's something here that isn't true, that it actually is just an idea or a belief or a habit or a reaction. So that will become apparent. And that is what rends veils, right? And it's true that then process of those veils opening and parting, and that's part of the path, part of the unfolding. Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. The other question is, there's always the path not taken. And I do really like inquiry quite a lot. I find a lot of value for just what I get out of it, bringing in the senses, especially staying with what's there, what's coming up. And my question, I don't know if you have insight to address this, or anyone else in this group that might be able to add, is there's something about meditation which I've not got fully into in terms of the deep stillness, the deep stillness. And I'm curious, is it compatible to try to have a disciplined meditation practice where I find deep inner stillness, and also versus it as a support to the inquiry? Yeah.
Yes. Well, actually, so for people who are diamond approach students in the school, I don't know if I got, if you're in a group or anything. No. Okay.
No, if I'm
For
like,
people who are in a group, actually a daily meditation practice is a requirement, right?
okay.
So actually, we find it is an essential support on the journey. So you need, and in my inquiry course, we teach the belly concentration practice. And the reason for it is that we need to be able to let go. Like inquiry leads us to engage with the content of our inner world. And that's what we do. We engage with it. But we also need to have the ability to disidentify from it, to just let it go. Right. So as a practice, that practice of to be able to then rest into that deep stillness, we actually find is very important.
And that's beyond the 10-minute centering that you do before inquiry, because I've taken your dive in one.
Yeah. Oh, so in the course, yeah, we do like a little short centering, right? So I would say, if people are really seriously getting into inquiry, then I think at least 20 minutes is like as a daily practice, because it takes 20 minutes for things often to begin to settle. And if you can do longer, if you can do 40 minutes, do that, right? That is very, very helpful for your inquiry. But it's good to be clear that it's a different practice, right? It's not this. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, though.
Great. You're welcome. Good questions. And Lucas. Don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, hello. How are
Hello.
you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. So, my question is about uh, anxiety, I have anxiety,
Hmm.
and I started therapy with compassionate inquiry, Gabor's therapeutic approach,
Mhm.
and yeah, and I started to learn some things and started to feel, this anxiety and to be with it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I have been with it many times, but I don't know. It's same anxiety and same
Uh-huh.
panic and
Uh-huh.
fear
Uh-huh.
and
Do you
I want.
understand anything about it? Do you understand where it comes from, or what's the anxiety about?
I don't know. I think it's uh, more like I'm feeling unsafe.
Uh-huh. So there's a feeling of being unsafe.
Yeah, and fear.
Uh-huh. Fear. And are you actually unsafe? Is it your living situation just
No, no, no,
no?
normal,
Okay.
everything
So
great,
there's
but
a feeling of being unsafe.
yeah, yeah, unsafe.
Unsafe in what kind of way? How do you feel unsafe?
What kind of what?
Yeah, like how do you feel unsafe? What kind of unsafety?
I don't know. I like fearful and full of fear and
Mhm.
um, not confident and not, yeah,
Uh-huh. So you can recognize that there's a fear and there's an absence of confidence. There's a feeling of no confidence.
yeah, that I'm not able to cope with it and I'm vulnerable.
So a feeling of vulnerability.
Yeah,
So
you
you
can't
feel
defend yourself.
vulnerable, okay, like you can't defend yourself.
Yeah,
Okay. And so what's it like as you talk about this now? What's it like? Do you feel some of that? Is that present?
I don't know which anxiety, but I feel anxiety.
Uh-huh. If you just describe the sensation of it, what's the sensation like?
Uh, I don't know, maybe because I'm talking to many people's faces.
Uh-huh.
That's what this anxiety is about, I think.
Uh-huh. Could be, could be. What's the sensation of it in your body? How do you
Uh,
feel it in your body? Can you feel it like anxiety sometimes like butterflies in the tummy? Or...
yeah, like that. Butterflies, and also I'm a little bit frozen. My
Uh-huh.
shoulders are tight.
Okay, so if you let your shoulders be tight and you feel the butterflies in your tummy, what's it like just to kind of feel that for a minute? Just be with that. To just kind of have a breath and acknowledge that's what's here.
It makes me laugh.
It makes you laugh. Okay. Yeah, what happens? What's the laugh?
I know I'm shy.
Oh, so you feel shy now.
Yeah,
Okay.
because many people here.
Right, right. Okay. But can you see, even just through these few little seconds, right? So the experience starts changing. Like there's anxiety, now there's a little bit of shyness, right? So something else is, and you can feel it like a bit in your belly and a bit in your shoulders. Yeah. So that's how the inquiry would go, to just be curious, like, okay, let me see what I can find out about this. Right? What is this feeling actually? Right? Yeah. Do you have a question? What's your question?
Uh, I don't know. My question was, uh, what is solution for anxiety to
Mm,
to feel more of it, or I don't know. I have spent, I don't know, quite a time when I feel anxious. I start to be with it and
yeah.
to kind of myself like this
Uh-huh. So being
to
with it is part of it. That like that's a step. If you were engaging with it according to the logic of inquiry, you would want to understand it. Like, okay, so I'm feeling anxious. What is making that happen? Right? Where
yeah,
is that coming from inside me? Right?
and
That's
that's hard
right.
to to uh to come up with, it's
Mm. And the way that you will find that out is by letting yourself go into the experience and just describing it and exploring it from the inside. Right?
how is it feels and
Yeah.
that.
How does it feel? What's it about? As I'm in touch with it, what can I tell about it?
um,
So that's how inquiry would engage with it. The compassionate inquiry that you mentioned there may have a different way of engaging it, but this kind of inquiry, this is the way that it would approach it. Yeah.
so you should mm, inquire to break free of anxiety, is it
Well,
right?
it might first lead you to discover what the anxiety is about, right? So it might seem, don't know if it will break free from it. We see in time it does, but that will come about as you see and understand what's making it happen.
uh,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah,
that was it.
good. Well, thank you for speaking up and bringing your question. Yeah.
Thanks very
Yeah, have you
much.
done any of this kind of inquiry, like in the diamond approach?
Diamond approach, no.
Okay.
My therapist, I have therapist free,
Huh.
He is
Right.
very kind guy, and I don't have a lot of money mm, to make.
Uh-huh.
If I had, I would do this also diamond approach, but
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, maybe a little bit of the online inquiry might be interesting, the dive-in inquiry course. I
yeah,
think Michael put some of the details in the chat. See, it might be useful for you, it might not. You could check it out.
mm, yeah. Thanks very much.
All right, you're welcome. Welcome. All right, everyone. I think that's our time for this evening. Nice to be with you again, digging into some of these subtleties of inquiry. So you'll find, we'll post the recording in due time on the YouTube channel and have like little notes so you can navigate to the interesting bits, and feel free to share it with anyone you think might be interested, or to comment on YouTube. I try and respond to those, and always, but try and do that. And yeah, look forward to seeing you next time. And some of you before then.
Thank you, Dom.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dom.
Thank you,
Bye,
Michael.
blessings.
Very much.
Bye.
And
Bye-bye.
everybody,
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
bye bye.